When I was younger, I thought if I get into certain school, I'll be happy. And then if I get a job, I'll be happy. Or if I get promoted, I'll be happy. Even after I achieved all these goals, I was not happy.
Welcome to the Soom Podcast, where we share stories, insights, and tools to help you live a happier life.
Hi everyone, this is Soom. Today we have a special guest. Actually, two guests, Yoonseo and Ji Won. Could you please introduce yourself briefly?
Hi, I'm Yoonseo. I'm a psychology PhD student in Princeton. I study how people make decisions regarding issues of justice and morality. I'm really interested in how people make decisions with the goal of understanding how we could possibly do better.
Thank you. Ji Won?
I'm Ji Won, and I am currently a PhD student in psychology also. I'm at Seoul National University. I major in cognitive and experimental psychology, and I explore educational interventions, mainly regarding active learning or improved feedback and sustained attention, and validate the effects of those interventions in higher education.
The topic today is happiness. And this is the main topic of this podcast. Maybe we can talk about how you define happiness in your own term. So how would you define happiness if you can define it in one sentence?
One sentence, that's hard.
I know it's hard, but if you can give it a shot, how would you define it?
Okay, I can go first.
Sure.
It was a good choice to, invite two PhD students because PhD life is quite far from happiness sometimes. So our definition of happiness might be a bit different from people in other occupations. But so for me, I am quite a calm person. So I don't have huge ups and downs, though I don't feel terribly miserable at times. But at the same time, I don't feel very happy and very high frequently. So, but there are times I guess once in a year or 2 years, I feel oh, I'm now really happy. But I think those were times when I felt I have a very good connection with people I love, or the society and the nature around me. And when I feel that I have a good connection, it's when I feel like my whole self. I have nothing hiding, and I'm, perceived and received as the person I am now. So I think that's moments of happiness, I feel.
Thank you for sharing. How about you, Yoonseo? How would you define happiness?
I'm trying to remember when I was still lost and I felt really happy. But I feel I can do a better job of just explaining what is not happiness rather than defining what it is. But I just recently had this thought that happiness is something that not to be chased or achieved, but it's something that you discover in the moment as you just do your thing. And just you find, okay, maybe I'm good enough and I'm just satisfied with who I am, what I have now, and maybe there is nothing that I need more. That's when I just discover that
being content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it resonates with me as well. I guess it's not about excitement or joy, but it's more I am not struggling and I am just content with who I am at this moment. It's a little bit different from joy in my case. So that is my definition of happiness. But I assume everyone's definition of happiness might be different based on their own experience and upbringing and everything. I really want to talk about the research that you are currently doing. If it is somehow related to happiness, it'll be great if you can share. Or if it's not related to happiness, maybe if you have read papers or books related to happiness, it'll be great if you can share with us.
I'm not sure if it be like directly related to happiness, but I hope like as I'm just like keep discussing on the topic that we will find some connection. But I recently had this paper that I wrote on evaluability bias, and I think that bias has been also like studied in the domain of happiness. So this bias is something that people show in making some kind of like decisions, and as people are like evaluating criteria in making those decisions, like they tend to like overweight the criteria that is like easily be able to like evaluate it versus like underweighting the criteria that's like hard to evaluate. So an example of that might be a case where, you know, like if people are asked to choose between a job that pays you like $70,000 per year but turns out to be boring versus like a job that's paying you like $60,000 a year but described as like interesting, people will say that they would like much more prefer to choose the job that pays more. So like $7,000 like boring job versus like rather than the $60,000 interesting job. And the reason for that is because people think like that difference in the payment is like much easier to evaluate, whereas like it's really hard to evaluate like whether how much it's gonna impact them, you know, like being engaged with like boring versus like interesting job. But what turns out is that if you actually ask people who are engaged in, you know, like boring versus interesting job, even though like the boring job would like pay people better, people report that they are like much less happy by working on the boring tasks. So that just kind of tells you how, you know, like the kind of things that people think really matters for happiness is not accurate predictor of what would actually make us happy. And I think that kind of resonated with the definition that I talked about earlier, that, you know, like I think in our culture there's like a really big trend of people think like happiness is something that they really have to actively like chase and achieve. And I think that we often fall into the error of like thinking, okay, if I, you know, like move on to like a better job and like make a better salary, like those are like really easily quantifiable criteria. And people think like once I, you know, like own it or like have it, I will be much happier. But then it's easy to realize also that even after you get into that, you know, state that you were really hoping to get, like you never really get that happiness state.
Yeah, I've been there. When I was younger, I thought if I get into certain school, I'll be happy. If I get a job, I'll be happy. Or if I get promoted, I'll be happy. But even after I achieved all these goals, I was not happy. I figured it never ends. I was like, wait a minute, then what is happiness? Maybe it's not in all these exterior goals. Maybe I have to find it myself. Maybe it's within myself. That's why I started researching on my own. That's why I wanted to start this podcast as well, to invite people in different industries to hear what they think about happiness. So, Ji Won, what do you think? Have you read any books or papers on happiness?
Sure. But before I share what I have learned, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Yeah. So then, like in your research, as you said, people find out that boring jobs, in the end, don't give me happiness. Then why don't people choose to move to interesting jobs later? Like, why don't they update their criteria of happiness after they find out that money is less important than being in an interesting field of area.
I just first want to acknowledge that study itself is not what my research was about, but I was just like connect it with like the general like evaluability bias. But also I think what they reported as like, oh yeah, like people who were, engaged in much less interesting job, like boring job, was actually turned out to be like less happier. I guess like they were not able to attribute like why they're unhappy. It's like they were still kind of like stuck with the mind of like, yeah, like maybe I still don't have like enough salary and that's why I'm still unhappy. So like with that kind of like prior belief they already have, like it's actually really hard to realize like what am I missing. That's why people just like get fixated on like that like easily valuable criteria, even though that's not gonna help them to be on like happy state. They will just like try to just like achieve more in that criteria. And I just like also want to add that so one like really hard to evaluate criteria that we easily overlook in like as like we are making like big life decision, but also like in thinking about like what makes us happy is like what this is gonna be like for me. So like that also kind of like connects to the point about like a feeling of like being content at the moment, even though like that's really hard to like imagine or like think about or like even compare with like like money or like getting good degree or like a lot of the credential that like our society approves. That's actually really important, like if you think about like just like living in a moment and feeling really content at certain time.
I guess like psychology in general kind of promotes self-cognition and well-being. And in that sense, psychology overall relates very well with happiness, especially like the field and research on well-being is becoming huge in our area. But anyways, like to sum up what Yoonseo just said, I really feel that learning about what one needs and what one wants in order to be content is very important, rather than being like swayed to other people's criteria of happiness, I guess.
I heard that Bhutan is one of the happiest countries in the world, and Bhutan is not one of the wealthiest countries. I heard that the country focuses on well-being of the people. Their focus is more about their mental health and physical health as opposed to wealth, money, or jobs, or things like that.
I wonder if it relates to like anchoring bias. That's like very well studied like phenomena in psychology. That depends on like where your anchor is. Like your feeling of like contentment will also like drastically differ. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'll be able to like articulate that and make it connection with happiness. But like for example, like in like very developed countries like USA or like Korea, people have like such a high kind of like expectation of like what you have to own or
Achieve.
to achieve, like to just like be considered like normal in your society,
Right.
being average. That's like actually very high expectation if you think about like going to like good college and like like living in like a big city and like affording like rent and like just caring about that many kind of societal expectation. Like if your anchor is like there, it's like so hard to actually like turn your focus into your inner state and think about like what really matters for your happiness. We'll like just like keep chasing what others would expect or like what others have.
Adding to that, I mean, like beyond country differences, I think the advent of social networking services have kind of made that phenomena worse. Like people post only the good parts of their lives on social media. And that kind of creates a wrong definition of happiness, that happiness is something only portraying good. But actually, everyone lives a life where there is ups and downs, and there has to be griefs and pains. But we get vulnerable to admitting that life goes with pain because everyone shows only the good parts of their lives.
Yeah, that's so true. If we go onto Instagram or TikTok, YouTube, everyone's posting fancy restaurants, vacation, fancy places. Whenever we look at those photos or videos, we feel left out. I'm sitting here in front of my computer working day and night, and this person is having a fancy vacation in a nice exotic island.
I mean, it really only shows highlights of people's lives, but it's really easy to just like be misled and believe like, oh, everyone else is just like happy and fell off.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because we always, I guess most people just upload happy photos.
There are, like numerous studies that already show social media really harms the feeling of happiness in an individual. And I had friends who would go off social media when they like feel depressed or when they feel that they're starting to compare themselves with another. And I also recommend people to go off social media in those cases. And I think like overall, these kind of electronic devices and alarms that go on and off like anytime in our daily routine, they also bother our like concentration or flow of living in the moment. And I currently am exploring like concepts of attention within our field. And it is really important for you to live in the moment and stay focused in what you're doing in order to feel happy or like content. But mobile devices nowadays don't really allow you to do that. So I kind of recommend people to go off their phones from a while to while.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I should try that.
It's really hard to do though. Really myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have your own practices you regularly do to stay happy? Like daily practices or methods, any exercises?
I think many people do this, but writing, I believe, is and have found to be very helpful for me. There are like practices like morning pages where you wake up in the morning and just write anything that comes up to your mind for 30 to 45 minutes. They say that golden time in the morning is when you let your conscious down. So you really can like talk about anything that's bothering your unconscious. But for me, I have a lot of morning sleep. So that was kind of impossible for me to do. So at night, I usually write what happened today, how I felt about it. Or when it is hard for me to like write long pages, I just write simple 3 things that made me feel thanks, gratitude, or happy. And that practice, although it is short, it really creates a difference how you think about your day. And that helped me a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I do the same. I write journal every night before going to bed. Like you, I'm a night owl, so I like to do things at night. I focus better at night. I have all these different thoughts come and go, and sometimes I cannot sleep. Right before going to bed, I sit down and write what's in my mind, what I liked, what happened today, or what I want to do tomorrow, and what I am grateful for today. After I write down everything, I feel so much better. I can sleep so well because I just pour everything out onto the paper. I actually share this method with my subscribers because it helped me so much.
Oh, I just want to first say that I'm really impressed that you both get happiness from writing. Because like writing is just like a source of big stress for me, like from work. But yeah, I didn't start this routine like as a way of, like being happy, but I just like started like running and like exercising regularly, like every morning as soon as I wake up. And I've actually found out like it's really helpful for me to just like de-stress and also like feel like I'm like living in the moment. And I think like what really helps me is just like as you're like really pushing yourself during the workout, like you actually forget everything else, and like you only think about whether I will be still alive or like breathing like in next like 10 seconds, and just like kind of having that like being in that like moment, and just like seeing yourself as just like a living kind of like organism. Really helpful, like just like getting away from like all the complexity of life. And like it's actually really simple, like like you're just doing it, and then you end up just like getting there. Because I feel like a lot of like stress like comes from all the anxiety that may not have any kind of possibility of like turning out to be true. So I think like exercising regularly really helped me to just like have that reminder.
Right. Yeah, you work out every morning, right? 7 a.m. Yeah, I've been
more
meaning to
amazing than
join. Sorry?
That's more amazing than writing, in my personal opinion.
I know. That's what I think. I've been meaning to join you, but 7 a.m. It's impossible for me to wake up that early.
I also have to admit that I'm such a perfectionist, and as I was like keep doing it and like realizing, oh, like I'm like getting fitter and like losing weight, I also like easily developed the obsession that okay, like what if I cannot keep on my routine and just like lose that habit. I was like so worried. And so like I had also that time that I was just like so worried about like not being able to like wake up next day and not being able to like fulfill the plan. But yeah, I'm trying to just like maintain the balance between just like seeing like a visible outcome versus like like enjoying the practice itself.
Yeah, that's great. I'll try to join you one of these days. And do you have any final piece of advice that you want to share with our subscribers who may be like struggling to find happiness?
So I think Yoonseo made a very good point, like on anxiety regarding thinking about the future that might not happen and that might not come through. Like I think it was years ago, I listened to a lecture by a CEO, and he said that he only thinks about that, like the risks that might come within 6 months. So the risks that might come after 6 months, he doesn't think about it because there can be so many changes to the external environment which could affect that risk. But like risks within the 6 months, he thinks it is important to address them and actually prepare for it. And I've been applying this to my life, which has made most of the anxiety go away. Because in personal life, it's also hard to think of what might come next after 6 months. Like COVID-19 might strike again, like everything could go all right. So I think like it goes back to living in the moment, but actually thinking more about the present than the future is important, I think. And in that sense, I've also heard the advice to create many snapshots of what happened within that day. So like when we live, we just like blow away our 24 hours and really don't think about what happened that day retrospectively. But when you think about what happened that day, what was like eventful, even if it wasn't a big event, and if you pile up those events, and when you look back, what happened within that year, you have many more snapshots of what you remember within that year. And that kind of makes you happy and content that, oh, I lived a life that was full of memories. And so I think living a life where you actually try to remember actively is also very important in feeling happiness.
I like that. Snapshots of the day. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. How about you, Yoonseo? Do you have any advice for our subscribers?
I kind of feel like I'm not qualified to give any advice about this.
It's okay. We're all struggling to find happiness.
Yeah, that goes the same for me too.
I just know I felt like I'm really struggling to find happiness, like at the point of my life as a grad student, like who is like grappling with like graduation, like
Writing.
thinking about my future. But related to like the point that Ji Won made about the snapshot, I think it's actually very helpful to live like short-sighted to, like feel happy in life. And also like I think the other point that I want to make is just like being flexible with what might matter to you. So going back to the point, like the question that Ji Won asked me about like why people who still were unhappy for being engaged with like boring task but like better paid job, like they could have had a chance to realize, okay, like it doesn't matter to me whether like I make like $10,000 more money, and like it actually mattered more to me that I am engaged with like an interesting task. But I think it's really easy to get fixated on like this is the thing that I've been pursuing, so I should just like keep doing it, and that really makes you fall into the loop of like just like keep chasing what will never actually help you to be happy. And that was kind of like advice that I got from my therapist, that as I was like so stressed about whether I will succeed in academia or not, even though I already kind of knew that academia will never make me happy, but I should like find a way to just like enjoy the process, or even just like leaving the academia. But like I think like what really made me hard was just like acknowledging that this is like not compatible with me, or like the kind of thing that I believe is gonna guarantee my happiness turned out to be not true. So just like being flexible and open-minded about things that you cared about can change, and it's okay to just like accept that. I also really helps.
It's like a chicken and egg problem, but I think Yoonseo might know better because she studies neuroscience compared with me. But I've heard like if you have like negative feelings or like you feel anxious, then your brain kind of shuts off like many diverse options and ways and decisions you could have possibly made or thought of when you're feeling positive. So that's why I think it connects to Yoonseo's advice to keep being flexible and open-minded, because that if you're in that state, it will open you up to more diverse ways and options and possible decisions that could lead you to happiness. But when you like start to shut down yourself or feel anxious, then you only see very narrow ways and options that you could choose from, which could kind of fall you into another pitfall of anxiety and depression and such.
I used to have 1 year plan. Whenever it hits December 31st, then I'll plan next year's, like what's gonna happen or what I wanna achieve the following year. But I stopped doing that because even if I write down all the things I plan to do, life doesn't go as I planned anyways. And then I get frustrated if I don't get to achieve that. because all these different things come in the way. Then I figured I'm not gonna plan, maybe not too far advanced, but maybe just couple months, and then see how it goes. I think I've been much more happier now because I feel less stressed. So living in the moment is great advice, and being open and flexible, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future, right?
Life never goes as planned, really.
Right. Yeah. So we should just go with the flow.
It's just made me kind of curious. So I'm pretty sure like all three of us here might have like P in the Myers-Briggs type. Are you
Personality test.
also P?
I am P. Yeah. Are you?
Three of us are P.
Yeah.
But I wonder like if people who have J in their, like personality type would also agree with this point in mind.
Oh, because the J's, they like to plan stuff, right?
And they really think that, like fulfilling that kind of, like plan is.
Yeah, I used to be a J when I was younger, but I changed. Yeah.
We should invite next guests who are having J.
J. Yeah.
And then see like whether they have like different perspective.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if this is just like Korean context, but I mean, I think I was like partly stressed out in all of this like planning stuff and plans of life stuff, because like the society thinks that you need a plan in order to succeed. But it kind of goes against my personality. I kind of like living with the flow. And I try to live by, like setting up plans and trying to follow them, but it never really worked. And I kind of stopped doing that, just like Soom. And my life like opened up. It's much easier for me now. So yeah, I mean, like, I think people can succeed and feel happy without any plans, totally. Especially for people like us, maybe.
Yeah, P's.
Yes.
3 P's. Yeah. So go with the flow. Okay. So my last question is, how can our subscribers connect with you and learn more about what you're up to? Do you have like a YouTube or Instagram? Or, if you have any papers you published or upcoming papers, how can we find out about it?
I have a personal website where I upload my publications, but it's kind of hard to spell.
Oh, then if you can send me the link, I'll share with my subscribers.
I will do.
I'm creating my personal website, so I don't have a website link to share yet, but I will definitely send my LinkedIn or email to Zoom first, and when I finish up my website, I'll also definitely send that to her too.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much for joining today. Thank you.
It was happy for us too.
That's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, please leave us a review on the iTunes and Spotify. That's the best way to support us and help us reach more listeners like you. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, please leave comments down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe button if you didn't already. Also, to stay up to date, please subscribe to my newsletter on soom.substack.com. Okay, that's it. See you next time.